manufacturing and formulation of bulk actives to finished dosage forms. Sir started his career with as a very young child, being fascinated in chemistry, and he his fathers being stationed at Calcutta airport as a meteorologist, but particularly during the Indochina conflict in 1962, stimulated and motivated Sir to look at chemistry, because he spoke to some of the American pilots who including other things, in Marathi we say khau, is they gave him books and a chemistry set. So he has been with many this institutions, as I said. He's a recipient of Scientist of the Year Award prize. He's an elected fellow of American Chemical Society, AAAS, Royal Society of Chemists, and has been a invited speaker in numerous national and international symposia. He is also section chair at Princeton, and he serves on so many professional, scientific, and advisory boards. Needless to say that we are indeed very fortunate that then. In fact, I think Sir himself offered to speak to us, and we felt so happy that Sir so immediately has volunteered to speak to us. So, Sir, we request you, I'm not going to take up much of your time, but I request you to talk about, we have given this title, you could well have you could look at it differently, but or word it differently. Global acceptance of reverse pharmacology and its application by medicinal chemists for drug discovery and development. Sir, I now hand over to you. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation unhesitatingly.
Well, thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to all of you scholars, ladies and gentlemen that are in India at KHRC, and even some tuning in by somewhat remote locations. I cannot ever underestimate the pleasure and honor I feel having received this invitation from a wonderful institution such as KHRC. Now, why do I reiterate that I feel it's an honor? As you can see, I have served as an adjunct research professor at many very prestigious institutions in all over in UK, in the USA. But KHRC was the first in India to reach out its hand of friendship. They gave me an appointment, and of course, I have always benefited from the incredible insights, wisdom, and knowledge font base that has been the domain of the Vaidya family. I cannot even begin to say how much I have personally learned from simple discussions with these eminent scholars. So the pleasure and honor is all mine. I've always pledged to do something for the incredible benefit of this particular field of reverse pharmacology and observational therapeutics. I have single mindedly embarked on a quest of bringing reverse pharmacology and observational therapeutics to the attention of some of the finest scholars of chemistry, molecular biology, please notice that this thing began by me for the spread of global knowledge, and I am sharing the podium with some other Nobel laureates whom you are well aware of, Jean-Pierre Sauvage. I'm sharing it with Sir Richard Roberts, Bob Grubbs and company. So I feel they have also reached out in giving me a remarkable forum to do the kind of work that I'm supposed to be engaged in. Now, earlier today, I was complimented for having woken up in the morning, but that's the best time to pay your respects to all the gods, and I certainly regard Ashok ji as one of the founders and, in a way, very close to divinity as far as this field is concerned. Now, many people always, I've used this for tremendous occasions and so on. I've learned something from my initial meeting with Ashok Bhai, with Ramaji, and all of the other scholars. Sir Isaac Newton was once asked, "How come you see so far?" And his reply was very precise, it was very pedantic. He says, "I see far because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants." So that is not an understatement. You always build on the learning that has been advanced by the others. In this case, Ashok Bhai, Ramaji, and their entire family assembled around KHRC, and I certainly include Raut and all the other colleagues. I've heard them give some wonderful lectures which have truly advanced the body of knowledge. My one big regret has been that some of these lectures are confined to a certain specific audience, and it is my goal now to sort of globalize this whole thing. So this slide that I have put up is an introductory slide that was given of a lecture that was given by Dr. Vaidya. Now, I assure you, Dr. Vaidya, that you have been the inspiration behind a lot of my work. You have been a teacher, and you are always present in this slide form in whatever lecture I give anywhere in the world on reverse pharmacology and some of the fundamental concepts. So these are now ingrained and enshrined in my memory. I do not need to carry this into KHRC, that will be like bringing coals to Newcastle. But it is this definition. I've memorized every word of it. I think so have you. And it is a very fundamentally new advance which takes these experiential hits and conducts lot of the exploratory studies to give international global respectability to this field. We are not advocating taking any shortcuts. We are not advocating what some people do, as that is simply administer these molecules and all that on a very random, on a very ad hoc basis. Ashok ji has been very profound and precise in saying that we must study the safety, efficacy, and so on. So these have been literally enshrined in my memory, and I use this at every turn. Now, today, let me sketch for you a little bit of my career. When I was a boy, I literally met Professor R.B. Woodward and some of the great chemists. Some of these introductions were catalyzed by people around me. But I developed a liking for the natural products. Now, that time, of course, from the vantage point of being a synthetic organic chemist. So, this is what we had studied in all our curricular matters, both in Ferguson College and later on at the University of Pune. And that is the past. We always had natural products as very effective medicines, and through much of human history. It does not matter whether this was being practiced in India, China, or anywhere in Europe. Many medieval monasteries did have their herb gardens and so on. So, of course, natural products has been a field that has been studied for a long, long time. You will recognize that a couple of these slides have been provided to me by Ashok ji. And take a look at Artemisinin, which was invented. Now, there was a very memorable program, and it was UU too got a Nobel Prize for that one. But she was specifically commissioned by the government of the then chairman Mao Zedong. China was suffering enormously from malaria, and this stuff is now the part of legend. How Professor Yu Tu actually analyzed and went into elaborate detail from all the old Chinese texts. She then brought her own modern science perspectives to the table, and the result was, of course, was the introduction of artemisinin into the marketplace, and thereby ridding China of what was then a major scourge. Now, of course, things haven't always been so nice because people are developing resistance and so on. But it was a spectacular advance. And please notice that the Nobel Committee did recognize that for a very painstaking and elaborate studies. I was always taught some of these things, like this famous story of the pumas and all that, drinking water from some of the watering holes, and then all the villagers and all noticing that their what we call now as malarial fever showed signs of subsiding. All that was because of the leaves and other plant material which was falling into the water, and of course they were extracting quinine into the water, and that was preventing some. Now, again, this was in my heart, it was a very memorable thing because when I started studying synthetic chemistry, my hero was Professor Robert Burns Woodward at Harvard, and he was the first person to complete a synthesis of quinine. This was in 1944, and of course, he was the subject of legend reported on all the newspapers. But I still remember my professors at the University of Pune teaching me the synthesis of quinine, and of course, I was extraordinarily excited about it. Much the same can be said. You all know the structure of quinine. Now there have been many derivatives that have been made. There have been analogs made, and typically the medicinal chemists do practice this kind of work. Now, the next molecule that we really studied from a total synthesis perspective was morphine. Now, morphine, of course, the synthesis was a very pioneering one at the time. It involved establishment of this beautiful ring that you see here. Our studies were not focused on just isolation and all that, but of course on the morphine itself, which found battlefield use for treatment. But the synthesis of this molecule by Marshall Gates in the 1960s represented a very major tour de force in organic synthesis. Now, please remember our curriculum when I started doing my master's degree program, it was not so easy to read a published synthesis and then translate it into your curriculum, simply because with all the committees and all that, that kind of introduction of new material was not always easy. But I was very lucky to get some very nice professors like Professor Wadia in the University of Pune who would actually teach me all this business about organic synthesis, and it really got me excited about chemistry. I think it was mentioned in the introduction that I had an American pilot and joined with my father. In 1965, they gave me a book on chemistry creates a new world, where I was really excited, very stimulated by the thought of inventing a few things in the laboratory. Now, later on, then as my education proceeded, then I started reading and doing some of the total synthesis. So you have molecules like vinblastine and vinpristine, which was initially pioneered by Eli Lilly, and then you had podophylotoxin. I still remember Professors Wadia and Marathi giving very elegant lectures on the stereochemistry of podophylotoxin. So these were all not just empty words at the time, they meant something, the chirality of these molecules. And then, of course, we had camptothecin, we had paclitaxel, and it soon became the job of every self respecting organic chemist to come take a molecule, isolate the molecule in its extremely pure form, determine the chemical structure, and then in a word that was commonly used, make a synthesis that was quote unquote amenable to analog design. So the goals were very laudable, and in those days, synthetic organic chemists enjoyed a certain position of privilege in American pharmaceutical industry. So again, why were these natural products so very successful? Well, you all do know that the plants and other organisms produce many of these biologically active substances. Many of them are in fact used for chemical defense. We are always fond of talking about the neem tree, which secretes a compound called azadirachtin, which is a very potent antimicrobial used for all kinds of dental care and all that. these substances are often extremely complex. Therefore, the gospel was that you cannot just do a total synthesis of these. You have to depend on isolation and other soil culture and other techniques. Most natural products have this built-in chirality, whereby most synthetic compounds were achiral. Why am I emphasizing some of these points? Please take a look at where the field was in the up to the 1980s. Many people were studying this, and in the NCL again I encountered a tremendous chemist, Professor Sukhdev. I learned a lot from him, but he taught me how to precisely isolate many of these materials, do a very adequate structure proof, and then literally go ahead to make these. At that time, there was a realization that you cannot synthesize these molecules one by one and have any hope of literally using them as drugs. So you had to define semi-synthetic processes. Of course, the total synthesis was always the subject of academic curiosity. But what was brilliant about these natural products is that they were designed by nature to interact with enzymes, and therefore it will be very nice if the natural products can help us to discover the new mechanisms of action. At that time also the questions were always asked, well, are you discovering medicines or are you discovering poisons? Of course, morphine, no doubt about it, it is quite toxic. And then for look at the congeners of morphine, like of course you start back from opium, even the codeine. All these molecules, there is a very defined limit wherein the toxicology starts manifesting itself. Of course, cocaine, you know that pilocarpine, all these hyoscine, colchicine, and all these business. Some of them do have in a limited context medicinal use, but if you overdo it, and that is a bad thing that is happening even today, you have enormous risk from imbibing this. So I finished my PhD from Georgetown University. Again, my work was all related to the synthesis of analogs, which were all geared towards manifesting some anti-cancer action. All my academic work at the time was done in the very, very traditional methods. I had not known anything about reverse pharmacology. I had not known anything about observational therapeutics and all the wonderful things that come behind it. So I went and did a postdoctoral work with Professor Sidney Hecht at MIT and University of Virginia, and this was the molecule we were all after. So what was this? This was bleomycin, which is elaborated from the fungus Streptomyces verticillus. It has a very complex organic structure made up of carbohydrates, heterocyclic moieties in profusion, and I was very pleased because to further my training, I participated in the total synthesis of this molecule, and I achieved some fame, if you will, or notoriety, if you will, in synthesizing the pyrimidobhlamic acid portion of this molecule. Now, even at that time, it was realized, by the way, that the therapeutic window is quite narrow. The difference between pharmacological action and toxicity can be sometimes a very narrow window, and bleomycin was no exception. It was used to treat a variety of cancer and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, lung cancer, testicular cancer, and so on. This was followed by postdoctoral work on palytoxin with Professor Yoshito Kishi. This at the time was the most complex organic material ever known. It had 64 asymmetric centers, so you can very readily realize that it has over a billion possible stereoisomers, and controlling the stereochemistry was something extraordinarily useful. But let me then advert to a point which I had not realized at the time. This molecule was realized, it was used by the natives in the Amazon, in the Brazil, and even in Hawaii. Why was it used? It was used to stun the animals of prey when people were hunting. Now, this is your first sort of reverse pharmacology. It was analyzed what the mechanism of action is going to be. They realized that people were using this for a specific purpose. They found out the structure, And that was some brilliant work done at Hawaii. They analyzed the chemical structure, then they made enough modifications to it. However, what was the problem? At that time, the supplies of this material would be very pitifully small. So my learning began in very small and interesting ways. I then went to work for a pharmaceutical company that was Merrell Dow, and of course, we followed in the traditional way again natural products based small molecular libraries, case studies of slaganin and cannula. So slaganin was a fascinating anti cancer molecule. Please notice that it has a bromine atom on the pherol. That was extremely uncommon even in those days. And then, of course, from Indonesia, the salesman and everybody had brought back from the soil samples this molecule called kalanolite. And we were given the job, of course, of doing the usual medicinal chemistry on it. Now, again, see what a beautiful learning experience it can be. I noticed and I said very specifically that this was brought by traveling salesmen and all that. In those days, when people went to visit a country, they used to literally bring back scrapings of their shoes from soil samples and all that. They used to bring back some twigs and all that for further study in the lab, which we were always happy to do. At that time, there was no concern or no thought being given to heavens, what is the intellectual property and all that being given. Then we had kalanolite, and we did again we brought together all our skills in traditional organic chemistry. We made molecules like isokalanolite, where we have replaced this oxygen atom with, of course, with an isa linkage. We now have a lactam. It's a six-membered lactam, and we were used to be very delighted when this showed some activity that was greater than ever before. All of a sudden, then, we realized that in the spate of all these mergers, acquisitions, and periodic restructurings, our industry went into a tailspin, and much of the natural products research immediately declined. And because it, there was an extensive effort in to find out why. Now, here is my thought process on this one. Please notice that all the molecules I have told you about before were derived from plant sources. What you are calling today derived from Ayurveda, from Siddha, and all that, but all from plant sources. Then somebody made a decision, a wrong decision, to expand the scope of natural products to include bacteria, mollusks, and fungi. And people got a lot of excitement. People would get on a cruise ship and go into Hawaii, into the Hamama Bay. They would isolate all kinds of sea anemones and everything else, and then declare victory because they have found out a very sophisticated molecules. Professor Koji Nakanishi at Columbia got his students to get 10,000 Amazon fire ants, put them in a column, and extracted some remarkable natural product. Another person actually took some cockroaches and extracted out the sex excitant, which was then defined as periplanon B. And Clark Still and Stuart Schreiber synthesized that. When they knew their synthesis was finished, when they hung up the lab coat on the coat rack for the weekend and came back on Monday to find out every cockroach in the building had come and congregated on those lab coats. And of course, some irritating members of the media pointed these people as very bad people because they have started a dating service for cockroaches. So sometimes that scientific illiteracy and all is bad. Then what happened with all these sea anemones and all that? You quickly realize that you have very complex molecules like the palytoxin I have shown you, where the draconian organic synthesis medicinal chemistry efforts are not going to be very, very good or effective. Commercial supply of the availability and natural products is simply not even sufficient for doing the biological assays. So you have this enormous difficulty that was perceived in also securing the IP as a monopoly in direct contravention to all the Phuket Declaration and so on. Now, this Rio Convention on Biodiversity, we debated this in IUPAC, but It helped in some ways. Before 1991, everybody just prospected for biomass with scant regard to the IP rights. Now, this whole process was declared illegal and so on and so forth. My biggest problem with all this was it pretty much brought natural products research in Western countries to a grinding halt. Many of the people in developing countries simply had an exaggerated notion on the value of their IP. I was trying to tell people, please let us collaborate and let us not have a stick in the mud policy where everything is to yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, that has not been cured, and I get into regular fights with things like the CSIR, which simply do not allow anything of value to be worked on in a Western scientific context. So then we came to the conclusion that all these high throughput strategies and all that they were designing is simply not good. Now, survey after survey has shown that more than half of the first in class small molecule drugs were discovered by phenotypic assays and all that. Now, industry used to make a big thing about target based approaches, but they didn't follow their own regiments. And then in 1991, we came to this absolute boondoggle, which was called as combinatorial chemistry. Now, what did all these resource management and MBAs and all that do? When I was a chemist, we had to make about 100 small molecules per year, which were all well defined, which had a sense of chirality about it. And then we simply took to making these analogs, getting it tested. Then the productivity expert said each chemist should make 10,000 of these molecules. Make some trivial ones, explore the whole chemical space. So R equal to methyl, ethyl, propyl, butyl, futyl. That became one of the orders of the day. Now, what most chemists do, even four-armed Indian gods cannot make 10,000 molecules just like that. So the chemists started depending on robotics. They started depending on the very simple reactions like the Keck coupling, the Sonogashira, and of course, everybody would put their samples on this robot, and then the robot would do its job, and you got these very complex mixtures. But the result of that was that a lot of the so called new biology was retrofitted to very mundane chemistry. And India and China were looked upon as simply low cost alternatives. You won't believe how many times people have said, just throw this into India or China, those guys will work for peanuts. And that is not the way to do it. That does not access all the global intellectual capitals and so on. And many of these MBAs would come to Indian companies and start demanding FTEs, which were at 300,000 a year per chemist in the USA, and people in Hyderabad and all gave them away for $20,000 an FTE, which was, in my opinion, an extremely ridiculous thing to do. So this combinatorial chemistry was an abysmal failure. It suffered from a lot of hype, and of course, the natural product screening and all that suffered. So, what do we do now? What does a medicinal chemist do before he can actually introduce some new drugs in the marketplace? By the way, I had the great pleasure of meeting Dr. Christopher Lipinski, who is very well known for these rule of five, which tells whether a molecule is druggable or not. He made a memorable comment in his lecture that if you took all these combinatorial library compounds made between 1991 and 2006, then if you put all of them into a barrel and you threw the barrel in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, your research productivity would have gone up by at least tenfold. So that tells you some of the state of the art. So we found ourselves at very major crossroads in the 1990s. And I was kind of debating where exactly we are going to go from here. Now, in America, we always said that we produce the best universities in the world. We have some of the finest graduate students and all that from coming in from around the world. Therefore, every pharma company should place every discovery operation exclusively in the USA. That has led to a very unfortunate subtext. And what has happened now? is that we have become the largest drug consuming country in the world, and not just pharmaceutical drugs. We get addicted to drugs at this young age of 0 to 4. Anytime you have an ear infection, the doctors prescribe you amoxicillin. Then you come to Ritalin, then you come to appetite suppressants. Now, Ritalin is particularly interesting because the people will drag their kids to the doctor and demand a prescription of Aldural. See, my son wants to get into Harvard, my daughter wants to get into Stanford, and the only way they're going to do that is by having Aldural, which is on manifest nonsense. Then you sort of become a teenager, you want to look good, so you start taking appetite suppressants. As a college student, you take these no dose tablets. This person is shown studying late, but of course, they can be partying late. Then you balance the pressures of family and career with Prozac, and then you reach this wonderful age group I'm in. It used to be called old, now it's called chronologically gifted. And above 65, you take so many pharmaceuticals. Today, the average American or even the average Britisher above 65 takes between 12 to 19 medications per day. Now, this is, of course, a slide that I have always used. We started collaborating with India, but not in an intellectual sense. You all do recognize the Gateway of India. Now, I did work and I ran a bit of a CRO operation. That was the original D&O, which got morphed into Think. Now, people ask me, your technology, health, innovation, novelty, why did you change the K to a Q? Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I rather fancy the Mr. Q in James Bond, who's always tinkering around with new technologies and so on. But listen to what happened. This man says it's true that your order was for a camel, but later on we received a lot of changes from your technical department. Now, please take a careful note of this particular year. Year was 2003. I had decided that I was going to become a serial entrepreneur and getting and branching out into new areas. And therefore, I started doing a lot of reading and other things. In 2005, I met, of course, guess who? I met Professor Ashok Vaidya. And it was clear from his extraordinarily mellifluous presentation, his passion for the science and all that, that this is something genuinely and spectacularly new. I was also privileged to meet Ramaji, and later on my whole relationship with KHRC through the other scholars like Dr. Amonkar, Dr. Raut, and let me not forget to pay. I never had the pleasure and privilege of meeting Dr. Dahanukar, Sharadini Dahanukar. I never met her, but I'm familiar with his work, with her work. And now, of course, I'm interacting very nicely with other scholars like Nirmala Rege, of course, there's Chaya Godse, Urmila Tatte, and so on. All these people, believe it or not, has made enormous contributions to my intellectual well-being. It's not just a health, well-being, and wellness and all that. These people have contributed to my intellectual wealth. And I started recollecting some of the fun things my grandmother used to talk about. Now, she and all the women of gone by, they used to realize that when you have this Ayurvedic thalis and meat, and by the way, in the 2005, an Indian restaurant started introducing Ayurvedic thalis in America. He said, everybody was kind of intrigued about what the possibilities can be. But in the year 2005, something else happened. My grandmother used to give us pomegranate seeds on our Srikhanda, on our breakfast yogurt. Of course, they contain some alkaloids, but then Harvard and UCLA published a joint paper. If you take 2 glasses of pomegranate juice every day, it will regress your prostate cancer. Notice the word regress, and it will have a beneficial use on breast cancer. I said, oh wow, now think about that one. That should be something very good. I also met that year Professor Sir Richard Roberts, who said very nicely, good, if you do not take food as medicine, treat your food as something sacred. study all the medicinal properties. Now, coming from a Nobel laureate in Western science, this was quite profound. But he says ultimately you might have to take medicine as food. He said, what would you prefer? Would you prefer to eat a nice Ayurvedic meal, or would you prefer to take 12 to 15 tablets as your breakfast and so on? Now, he is a very confirmed vegetarian. He adores coming to India and sampling some of our very, very wonderful cuisine. Of course, he was very struck by somebody giving him a lecture on, oh, we have Karelas in our meal because they are known to reduce the blood sugar. So, oh, that's very interesting. And then, of course, the lady of the house promptly served him several helpings of heavily sweetened desserts and so on. So he says that isn't doing very well with the Karelas and all that, but a lot of fun. So take a look at these. Now, Ayush Therapeutics, you know all this by now, but again, I just want to illustrate a pitfall. We are familiar with Ayurveda. I believe a lot in the Siddha and, of course, Unani, but I believe in originally going with plant based medications. I'm not an expert on homeopathy, and I do not know what experimental science I can do. So you all know this, Ayurveda being the discovery engine, and this was always touted by Dr. Mashalkar, that we have these well documented plants and other extracts and traditional formulation. The big problem with CSIR is they have not made these available to researchers like me, like yours truly. I've always believed in this, and if necessity is the mother of invention, frustration has got to be the mother of innovation. Look at all the Western allopathic science. So many drugs are being withdrawn, not enough are even being introduced into the marketplace, and everybody is focusing on diseases for the rich. Nobody has targeted anything else. Now, this slide is actually derived from Dr. Vaidya, which elaborately spells out how you can take these botanicals and do some of these studies. Now, unfortunately, this has been almost contemptuously disregarded by most of Indian Western trained academia. Most of the synthetic chemistry departments in our country do not care. Many of the VCs say, you just do these botanicals, and now the FDA has given you something about you can purify these to four components. Why are you bothering to do this? No, ladies and gentlemen, this is something profoundly important. And Ashok Bhai has already sketched out this almost glorious path for doing natural products work. Now you will say, let me exemplify what chemists like me have done. I am always there to help people. I do not have the medical expertise that is prevalent at KHRC, where you actually administer many molecules to the patients, you monitor them, all their vital signs, and you derive some very, very fundamental pioneering conclusions from your experiential hits. I am a chemist. This is the time to use my help. If you find out truly that something is working to your expectations, beyond your expectations, now you put a speed call out to people like me. And this is what I set myself out to achieve. So, in the course of my own work, and this, I really love telling these stories. All these molecules were derived from what we would now call reverse pharmacology. So, people were taking these from herbal extracts. In America, this had become a big movement. There was some limited stability, toxicity, and other data, but most important, people were taking these molecules in conjunction with their Western medications. So we focused on some of these things. Take a look at the anti-malarial numinolide, and this was isolated as a almost beautiful 10-membered ring macrocycle. And we decided, why not we try to synthesize it? Let us see if we can increase the availability. And I was having the enormous stroke of luck to collaborate with Dr. Devendra Mohapatra and his graduate student Dondi Ramesh. So we had designed a beautiful synthesis. Now the year is 2006. We have Bob Grubbs visiting in India for a major conference. I was the head of the US delegation. We brought 72 scientists to have conferences at the NCL and at the IICT. Now, Bob Grubbs was immediately struck with this one. He said, "Oh my God, it's a nine-membered ring lactone. These are notoriously difficult to make stereo specifically." Oh, we said we are going to try. We assembled this by the Yamaguchi protocols. We assembled this, and this is what I had suggested to the PhD student Dhundi Ramesh. I said, let us first deprotect this protecting group with DDQ, and therefore we will take this OPMB group off. We will get the two hydroxyls here, and then using Bob Grubbs' second generation olefin metathesis catalyst. Please remember, he had the Nobel Prize for this one, and he was physically present in Pune at the time. So we said this is a great time to try the reaction. He had, of course, arranged some supplies of this for us. And Dhundi Ramesh immediately got a very exclusive yield of this particular Z isomer, which was the isomer that was pharmacologically active. Now, Dondi Ramesh did something on his own, and this is what I love about the initiative of some of these PhD students. On his own, he decided what will happen if I reverse the order of reaction, if I first cyclize and then deprotect. Lo and behold, he did exactly that. And look at the remarkable specificity he got. And this was all playing out in real color, and Bob Grubbs was extremely and extraordinarily impressed. Well, we then made the desmethyl-noninolide, and this technology worked even better. We got exclusively E and exclusively Z. So now it gets really very, very fine. We could make all the molecules in that series. This is the synthesis of deca-restrictin. Again, the fundamental premise remains the same. So we have become medicinal chemists. All of us have used these principles from literature, that these molecules have been administered to patients. There is some nice experiential data, not as sophisticated as what is generated in KHRC, but a good start nonetheless. And notice again, we got this exquisite stereochemistry. And this was our other synthesis of deca-restrictin C2. We could also make the other enantiomer, and that was also extremely, extremely good and precise. Bob Grubbs got wildly excited about this one because there was a fundamental chemical advance ingrained in this one. Please notice that we at random had used the protecting group of OPMB. Now, what if changed? Will it change chemistry? We found it does. So this was the first example of a protecting group directed olefin metathesis which gave absolutely stereo-specific product. He got me in touch with Professor Goddard at Caltech, and we are now publishing some set of rules. So this is what will be incredibly useful to the medicinal chemist, and of course this is the subject of today's discussion itself. Now, let me give you some fun examples that I found in the way. This was a molecule also derived from natural products. This was done by Ray Bergeron. Again, this is to treat a disease called as thalassemia. Of course, you have this beautiful desferrithiosin linkage, and of course, they were proceeding along clinical trial. Now, all of a sudden, I got a call from Novartis saying, Dr. Chorgade, one of the key ingredients of this is cysteine, and please realize that you can have all the cysteine and all, but we are buying it in the USA for $225 to $240 a kilo. Somebody is making it for $3 to $4 a kilo in India, and the material seems good. Now the address of the plant was a giveaway. It said near Tirupati Temple Complex. At that point, I very quickly realized what was going on, that the devotees which flock in large numbers, they have a ceremonial haircut right at the Tirupati Temple Complex. And some entrepreneur had figured out that you can hydrolyze those human hair with hydrochloric acid and literally crystallize out the cysteine. Very nice. Now the FDA was alerted to this one, that we are buying it from this. FDA insisted on coming for a visit. Now, the Food and Drug Administration of the USA, they like clean care facilities. They like to review the CVs of employees. I said, you're not going to see anything like this, but this is something we have to see. So they came, they saw, and they said, this is the most interesting chemical plant. People have a haircut, and somebody sweeps all the hair into this chemical vat. At the same time, we met three very orthodox Jewish gentlemen who said that we are using the system for certification as kosher food, and therefore also these hair are being exported to New York for making wigs. So all told, this so-called plant was approved both by the FDA and by the Orthodox Jewish community. So now I was getting really excited about my things with natural products and so on. Again, we had highlighted an important concept, so we decided we are going to make some hybrid molecules. Now, what is the big theory in allopathic drugs? One drug, one target. One target can attack only one biological system and so on. In Ayurveda, everything is different. You have multi-targeted drugs. I said, why not? We make some hybrid molecules because these will have the effect types, they will have different functionalities embedded in the same molecule. And I was lucky to get some very fine collaborators. Professor Anjali Rahatgaonkar was one of them, and we decided early on that why not we try on a quinolyl chalcone. And again, these had been extensively used in medicine. We did the reaction, and we got some very new scaffolds, like what I have shown you here. So now you can cyclize this and notice you get a beautiful molecule shown over here. Why can't I extrapolate this to other foods? Now, what has happened in all these medications and all that, people have studied extensively the medicine part of it. They have not studied the chemistry, and the medicinal chemists have been blissfully unaware of some of these very important things that you are observing over there. Now, if you take Soralia cordifolia, my attention as a chemist is drawn to this. How can I functionalize? But I want to draw your attention to something else. All these papers are being published. Look at this, Camp and all that in Amsterdam. Then you go to Gingiber Officinale. All of you know this as Shunti. All this is some beautifully Sanskrit text. My attention here is to this biological target, and many of these phenols, many of these gamma diketones and all that have not been functionalized. Again, look where the work is going on through the gingerols by Omizumi in Japan. Where, ladies and gentlemen, are our Indian chemists? Where are our medicinal chemists? And somehow I feel that I need to shake up the tree quite a bit, whereas to incorporate all this work into the modern thinking. By the way, my grandfather and grandmother, we were very fond of the Marathi movies, and in the Lavani movies, as they were called, like Sawal Masa Aika, there used to be these wonderful Sawal Jawab. Now, I was always attracted to one such stuff. In one of them, Arun Sarnaik playing the role, he asked the heroine, played by Jayashree Gadkar, and the question was very simple. अगं स्वयंपाकाची तू सुगरण नारी भाजी चिराया अशी बसव मग सांग मर्दिनी कांदा चिरताना पाणी डोळ्यामध्ये येतं कसं. Think about it. Now, Jayashree Gadkar or any of the songwriters had no idea of chemistry, they had no idea of reverse pharmacology, no idea about anything else. But take a look at the answer. He says, अरे आम्ही बायका शासन करतो पुरुष जातीच्या कांद्याला पण येड आमचं काळी जर रडतंय पाणी येत असे डोळ्यात. Okay? Now, that is a very profound answer in a way, but take a look at what Eric Bloch did with it. Now, Eric Bloch was a scientist in Marathi. He decided, he wandered in the towns of Maharashtra. He found out that the villagers actually carry some raw onion with them, which is they use to ward off sunstroke. And he has actually isolated the extracts, he has purified them, and he has marketed a remedy for sunstroke and for nose bleeding. Now, why should this work have been done in Sunni Albany and never done in India? We are blessed with this traditional knowledge and so on, but we just don't make use of it for ourselves. Take a look at this Indian traditional medicine. We have got an incredible array of scaffolds, but again, my attention as a chemist is drawn to the wonderful chemical structures which are all screaming out aloud hey, functionalize me, do some medicinal chemistry on me. I have chirality, I have diversity, and so on. So you look at it called the curcumin, a very unique tertiary alcohol, a very unique alkene linkage. It is vinylic, and all these can be used to couple these things together. So these are molecules that are and should be of extreme interest going forward. Now, what is the second aspect of the hybrid molecules? I can make two scaffolds in the same one, but I can also couple two different or three different molecules into doing this and thereby expanding the property range. This is what I envision medicinal chemists to do. Take a look at these inhibitors of aldose reductase, you have compounds like mangiferin. Again, take a look at the phenolic linkages. Take a look at this particular linkage over here. The ketone is ripe for functionalization, and you can cross couple one molecule with the other, much to our extreme benefit. Now, as I said, I never had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Shirazini Hanukar, but from what I've heard about her work, it is pioneering, it is of seminal importance, it is profound. But when Uday Ore and we met Dr. Vaidya and all that, there was an interesting thing that was going on in the Western world. The Western world is suffering from the diabetic therapy, like Acadia and so on. And now we said, why is that? Because of the enormous cardiovascular risk. Now, Mother Nature has made these leaves heart shaped. So we said, can we use this to ameliorate the heart risk of this particular molecule? And with Professor Sane, he actually did some work. He isolated some of the compound, and we are all set to make hybrids of that with even the drug molecules from the Western world, things like pioglitazone, and we are hoping that the cardiovascular risk will be ameliorated. So Tinospora is incredibly rich in scaffolds, and Professor Vaidya and company, we want to work with you. Uday Ore, me, Professor Varsha Mane, we are all trying to put together a very nice project for health and human wellness and so on. So we have now actually established this company. Our thoughts are to align yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We want to bridge all these gaps between traditional medicine and cutting edge science. That is not to say that traditional medicine did not have the science, but too often it has been looked down upon by even some members of the academic community. They say, "Ah, we don't simply believe in this one." But trust me, ladies and gentlemen, believe in it, because our elders were not fools. And though they did not speak the language of chemistry, for example, like I do, they knew a few things. They knew that they were observing some very key things about curative effects or something. So we want to change the conventional wisdom on its head. We are going with a very unconventional approach. We are taking the traditional Indian medicine products with years of safety and efficacy claims, mechanism of action, and so on, and therefore we are following Dr. Vaidya's famous precepts of not necessarily relying on one target, one molecule, and we are going to focus on the extremely and extraordinarily chiral molecules. I don't need to lecture you about this one, but I use this slide to talk to many people. These are indeed the benefits of reverse pharmacology. So, this is going to be a very key element in our scientific armamentarium or even in our repertoire. We are very fortunate that we have had the collaboration of an absolutely diabolically clever scientist. His name is Anton Fleury, and he has devised an entire software program called Information Flow Analysis, where he analyzes big data, he analyzes clinical effects derived from centuries. He has all these omics network, protein interactions, and he can cross analyze over a trillion data points. Then, in my dream world, we can get a lot of data from Ashok and Rama and all of you people at KHRC. You have accumulated a lot of data. Now is the time to mine it. Now is the time to subject this to this kind of remarkable analysis and draw some cross-functional collaboration. So here is a perfect example. Take a look at what the natives in Africa were doing. In sub-Saharan Africa, when they were famished, hungry, far from home, they used to chew on the glabrous roots of this plant, which was called as Udia gordoni. Professor Stephen Lay was on the scientific advisory board of Pfizer. He got excited with this one because this offered a fundamentally new mechanism of satiety, and that was extremely important for obesity treatment. And then Pfizer decided to invest $2 billion in this drug program. All right. So now, what was the drawback to it? Why couldn't they proceed? Because this plant grows 6 inches in 12 years. Now, that's not a very sustainable production. Although you have made some of these steroids and some of the sugars, it is just not going to be very valuable as a drug. So now take a look. When up comes Tony Fleury, he analyzes with his program and he tells me, now I needed this help from somebody else, that this Caralluma fimbriata tribesmen would pack a few sprigs of this to sustain themselves on a multi-day hunt. How brilliant is this? And now we find out that this plant grows 12 inches a month, and the steroids and the chemical sugars are structurally almost identical. So now a synthetic chemist like me can design some spectacular synthesis, but we can make this into a sustainable process. And this is the kind of help, this is the kind of intellectual expertise that I will continue to bank on to KHRC. I hope I am making the case to you that all these techniques are phenomenally useful to new medicinal chemists. We are not there just to make methyl and ethyl analogs. Here is some absolutely wonderful work by J.S. Yadav, formerly the director of IICT in Hyderabad. He published a remarkable paper. It was reducing a ketone with carrots, Daucus carota, to an epimeric mixture of alcohol. I like this, we use this, and then Merck called us to say, can you scale up the technology to 200 kilos? Well, yeah, I have to buy a lot of carrots, so we sent some lab people to inquire, and within 2 hours we were visited by the local police because the next day there was a festival where everybody was making gajar halwa and all that, and they thought this Mukund Churgade is some bad guy who is trying to leverage all this material. So where have I brought you? I have brought you to the point where many people here have started believing in the fundamental concept of everything that is enshrined in Ayurveda, multi-targeted drugs, everything else. Take materials with some very defined clinical objectives, clinical endpoints, which have been extensively studied. Now bring this from bedside to bench, study the chemistry, refine and purify these materials to a new level. And now comes the year 2014. My son has just graduated from Carnegie Mellon University with a degree in chemistry. He's looking to do some MD, PhD. And there we met Professor Martin Burke. All this has been an incredibly transformative experience for us. So, what does Marty Burke say? And he has really gone out of the bandwagon. As I said, today, me, Mukund Chorgade, personally enjoys a lot of respectability, a lot of faculty positions. But the first medical school to give me a adjunct professor facility was the University of Illinois Urbana. Some of them came visiting, and I think COVID notwithstanding, those collaborations will grow. But take a look at the power of modular assembly, and all these remarkable things have been assembled through that transforming power. Now, what is Marty Burke's original idea? He said, most of the physicists have been very brilliant about espousing their ideas and coalescing around billion-dollar ideas. So the physicists raised a lot of money for the Higgs boson and fundamental particles project. Then the biologists raised a lot of money for what? The human genome. He's calling for all of us chemists, particularly those working in natural products, to coalesce around this idea called as the natural productome, where you build exquisite structures of these, then you assemble them, you fold them, and then you tailor make them. Pretty exacting specifications. Ashok Bhai and Ramaji and colleagues, I think the very idea to build this is very exciting. You can take all the data you have obtained from all your clinical experiential observations and all. You can feed it into these computer programs. Initially, you can do the synthesis. Well, how exactly are we going to do this? Are we truly going to assemble the natural productome? So the whole idea is to build a Lego kit for molecules. Now, not just the kids are happy, but even older scientists like me are extremely happy with it. So imagine the whole natural world being split into 1200 basic fragments. That's what they're finding out. Whether it is strychnine, whether it is palytoxin, whether you can break this down into about 1200 fragments and then reassemble all these into a natural productome. Now, this molecular Lego kit can be used for making polyketides, polyterpenes, fatty acids. Now, I spent 2 years of my postdoc doing a synthesis of a small portion of the bleomycin molecule. I spent 15 months of my postdoc in making a small portion of palytoxin. Today, the students with all this business, they are assembling all these pieces in a matter of 1 month or something like that. And why are they doing this? Marty Burke has become a strong proponent of ours, these whole concepts of observational therapeutics. He has actually invented what is called as a small molecule machine. And this is what it is in its simplest form. You can use the protect, deprotect strategies. You can wash out the wrong reagents. But this paper and this work, this was spun off into a company called Revolution. This is now a $90 million initial investment company. It will grow to be a $1 billion company very soon. And I would venture the opinion that Marty Burke is going to win the Nobel Prize for these extraordinary contributions to organic synthesis. Now, he told me something more interesting even 2 days ago. And he said, Mukund, we are going to offer this on license. If your Indian colleagues and all that want to set it up in their lab, we can do it. And you can make all kinds of fascinating molecules. Well, some of those approaches are shown here, and they are published from beta protected haloboronic acids, from N protected amino acids. You can make all these species, and these are the species he has made in his lab in double quick time. And many of these are very profound with wonderful biological activity, and they are collaborating. They are kinase inhibitors, they are all kinds of stuff. These are things which will be extremely beneficial for many people. So, in my dream world, we will take all these beautiful data that has come out of KHRC. Let us set up an operation where we isolate those molecules, we purify them to a nicety, and we synthesize them, we cross couple them, and we make some contributions to the natural productome. Just let me also say, what do I do as a discovery chemist? Now, all of you are obviously very familiar with several fundamental concepts in drug metabolism. And the old models in Western companies, where you go painstakingly into rats and dogs, they are now not the methods of choice. The animal sacrifice activists and all that continuously rant and rave about it, and therefore today people have switched to using hepatocytes, rat liver microsomal fractions, S9 fractions. All of them suffer from a very common drawback that they can be you can be making materials only in very small, sometimes vanishingly small yields. You cannot really detect all the active metabolites, the unstable metabolites, and therefore many drugs, Western drugs, have been withdrawn from consideration because those active metabolites, which can be epoxides, can be reacted with biological nucleophiles like glutathione and so on. The drug safety, the FDA has always flagged this, that the current methods are not really adequate. Now, We have some things in the works. As a chemist, I said, why don't we invent an in vitro model system which has to be relatively inexpensive, reproducible? As a chemist, I can weigh this down to a nicety and so on and so forth. And then I can have a very rapid means of predicting the toxicology. And this will be very helpful on many of the molecules we are working on, like Tinospora cordifolia, which has become a hot favorite of mine, along with some other things. Now, take a look at our invention of the so-called synthetic liver. When you and I take a pharmaceutical product, the cytochrome P450 acts on it. It is, of course, sterically protected. It is activated by the protein. It will generate an active oxoferryl cation, which will go to act on the drugs and make all these metabolites. It behooves of us to study these metabolites. And people, every time they report, oh, I took some herbals and it gave me a problem. Because we have to answer their questions and concerns. Now, the tetraphenylporphyrin is dependent on every heme protein. It contains of a tetraisome macrocycle. In its purest simple form, it is not all that stable, but we found out a way of making some. It is tumbling around in solutions. The catalytic turnover number is phenomenally low. We figured out that if you put some steric barriers around it, then we can pucker the molecule. It can go into a saddle shaped conformation, and the stability goes up enormously. Where we were able to make these molecules, which are now called as the Chorgare dolphin catalyst. They have given us that designator. In literature, they can effect you all kinds of oxidations. Like you can take from molecules like codeine, even like opium and so on, you can deprotect the O methyl group, you can trap the intermediate O hydroxymethyl, and then it can lead you all the way into the phenols as well. So this is a gift that has kept on giving. I can make you the epoxides, I can make you the dihydroxybenzene. But we did this as a proof of the pudding. We took a drug like aminopyrine, then by classical organic chemistry, we found out that we can predict some of these metabolites. Well, when we subjected these to the reaction, sure enough, we got all the known metabolites, but we got four completely unknown ones as well. And we were even more delighted when they found out that these are the molecules that are implicated in the toxicity and so on. Now, take a look at how you can use this from drug discovery. This is again a molecule isolated from natural products, but originally there was a double bond here. Every computational chemist said we are really concerned that we are going to go ahead and generate some specific problems like fetal toxicity. Well, we could isolate these. We delivered 18 grams and we proved them that the fetal toxicity is very real. We could then hydrogenate and then we could come out with these metabolites, and the drug actually went into chemical production. Now, I'm very thrilled with this one because this work has landed me on the website of Prevention of Ethical Treatment of Animals, the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the Anti Vivisection Society, as a right thinking scientist who has the welfare of animals at heart. I believe in that. Even my synthetic chemistry should be geared for the common good. But I remember one very irate visitor coming into the middle of my lecture and screaming at me virtually that Mukund, why are you doing all this rubbish? Why are you killing rats? And all that. I wasn't doing any of that. But she said in America you should work and experiment with lawyers because there are a lot more lawyers in America than there are rats, and the scientists will always get more attracted to the rats, so they'll have no difficulty in sacrificing the lawyers. At this point, all that I could say was, Madam, I cannot use lawyers because there is no proof that any data I get will be extrapolable to human beings. So that is the sum and substance of it. Now, in the last few slides, I'm going to tell you something that is evolving in very dramatic fashion. Again, this is how we are going to progress some of these remarkable concepts in some of the molecules that I have alluded to here. Right now in America, there's a company being set up. It is called as the Nirvana. water company. Now, the name has obviously very positive connotations for us in India. But what has happened over here? This is an active lifestyle brand. One of the things always people ask me that all this Ayush and Ayurveda and yoga, it is not really geared for immediate short term treatment. Like if I'm having an imminent heart attack, if I'm down, then you are not going to tell me to just have some herbs for the next 3 months in a row. Then by all means go to a Western hospital, but use these concepts of reverse pharmacology and all that, use the whole concept of Ayush for long term well being. So these guys are practicing that. So this is the water that has been actually infused with a material called as hydroxymethyl butyrate. This is a metabolite of leucine, and this is now being marketed by everybody. So take a look at what it does. There was a scientist in Vanderbilt, Naji Abumrad, who actually found out that this material has profound benefits for healing of muscles in athletes who have sprained them and so on. These people used to be given tablets of calcium. Now, you don't always have to put everything into a calcium tablet or capsule and run it through the system. We have not to do the same thing for every molecule derived from Ayurveda. Once we have proved that there is no toxicity, once we have proved the benefits, you can go back to administering the mixture, but now we have a defined scientific base. So, what did these guys do? They mixed the water and they infused the hydroxymethyl butyrate into it. So this is the gentleman. He has now established what is the billion-dollar business, and then all of a sudden something magical happened. People realized that why should this be given in capsule form only to the athletes who are doing strenuous exercise? Why not make it available to all the citizenry as well? And then they actually purchased some land under which there is two ice age aquifers and five natural springs. Between them, these contain over a trillion gallons of water. Now think about that. You can fill your water bottles, and they are right now manufacturing. The plant is an extremely impressive one, and therefore, this molecule, which is HMB water, they are even making the polyethylene terephthalate. And look at the area around it. This is going out into Costco and all that for doing some wonderful things. People are buying it in the US stores here. Why do I allude to that one? What is the next item on the agenda? And here I have to thank my friend Uday Ore, who has set up a company of his own, and he has got now manufacturing plant and everything else. And his vision, which I strongly endorse, is why not we partner with companies like this? Why not we derive intellectual benefit from the work of you scholars at KHRC? One of the obvious things to do is to make medicated water. And one of the nice things to medicate into this, into infuse, is what? Tinospora cordifolia, which is all kinds of fascinating things. There are others, there will be definitely tulsi, but above all, we are going to depend on the advice, the camaraderie, the stimulating mentorship of all of you scientists. I mean, you all have contributed so much to the uh, health wellness enterprise without necessarily having the collaboration of some of the chemists and other faculty members in India. But we are here to make a difference. So, in the end, I remain convinced that this is the way of the future. You can call it traditional medicine, but this is going to continue to be the rich reservoir of natural products, and you can continue on this wonderful pathway. Let us jointly harness the transforming power of all this science. Science is not going to work in isolation. Unfortunately, many times we remain in our own individual silos. So this is going to require bringing together a whole disparate range of scholars to impact on a particular problem. I've been having some discussions with a remarkably bright person at the University of Mumbai, Professor Varsha Kelkar Mane, who is now an expert on PCR. She is a very skilled biotechnologist. I have suggested to her that you take some students, send them to KHRC, make a note of all this, and let us put together some very coherent and concrete programs. In what way is help being provided from here? Take a look at Marty Berg through NSF. NSF has provided $180 million to set up an institute for doing this accelerated synthesis. Well, they are not going to do accelerated synthesis on methyl ethyl analogs. They can do it on some of our particular products. And this is a huge workshop that has been organized in the National Science Foundation and the US Academy of Sciences in Washington DC area, and I'm going to be a participant of this one. What they are doing is that they are training people now to be entrepreneurs of the future. You can be not a chemist, a chemical engineer, you can be a lay citizen scientist, you can be anything that you want. And this pioneering gentleman is Martin Berg. He's one of the youngest enfant terribles of the science, and he's capable of profound things. But he has enormous respect for us and this institute. Ashok Bhai, he has pioneered the concept, a word called as the citizen scientist in America. You will be also pleased to know that at my urging, he has now incorporated into NSF the whole definition of Vaidya scientist. And Vaidya can have all different and nice connotations as well. So there are these kind of things called as the dolphin tank, where you are recognizing that the shark tank is a little bit too aggressive. The dolphin tank is a collection of like-minded individuals who assemble, who parlay, who rendezvous with each other to essentially discuss new ideas. They are judging contest. You get awards of $10,000. They want to do a big deal in India like this next January, a big global deal. And I'm sure you recognize this rather handsome looking guy who then served as the chief guest of that particular function. So that brings me to the end. I once again, I've said this publicly many times, I've expressed my admiration for Dr. Ashok Vaidya. I've said it publicly many times. As I said, I've even knelt in prayer to him, paid the right amount of obeisance. But I believe in all this that Divyatvachi yeta prachiti tethe karamaze jurati. Let the world come together in bowing their hands, in holding their hands to not only an individual or two, but also to this whole concept of Ayush as well. And I can assure you, I will never be lacking in my dedication, in my devotion, in my loyalty to pioneering things like KHRC. We should not be ever frustrated by some ifs, ands, and buts that happen along the way. And I can assure you that I will continue to wear the badge of honor of an adjunct professorship at KHRC. With that, may I conclude my talk with my favorite story. People always give talks to a lay audience. I hope I haven't delved too much into the boring and mundane details of the chemistry, but I've kept you excited. But one speaker was giving a talk to an audience about diverse fields and all that, and the audience was asked, did the speaker succeed in conveying his excitement, his enthusiasm? And the audience member said, well, at the beginning of the talk, there were two people who knew what he was talking about. One was he, the other was God. At the end of the talk, that number has been reduced by at least one. I hope that has not been my fate today. But thank you very much for your grace, your generosity for all these years, and above all, the wisdom from which I've learned and I continue to learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm not a chemist. I don't pretend to be one, but you have really motivated me. You have, you have illustrated very beautifully what that the world is our oyster, as they say. I now request, if you don't mind, people who want to ask questions. May they ask you some questions?
Absolutely. Go for it.
So the field is now open, and one at a time, please ask questions.
Dr. Ashish Padke, it's very nice to see you too here. Very nice.
I request Dr. Prakash Diwan, because I think he is one of the leaders of Indian pharmacology, and I see also Sudarshan Angarji, who has been a leader in education in the nation. So I would request Prakash first to, because it was really a symphony. It was symphony to the ears, and it's also an intellectual feast. So I would request Prakash first to, because he has been trying to wake up. The wake up call which Mukund showed was actually a brainchild of Prakash Diwan. Prakash, are you there?
By the way, if somebody can take some screenshots and send them to me, I'll be very grateful. I will treasure these memories.
Yeah, it's all recorded.
Shubhada, may I request you to take the screenshot simultaneously?
Okay,
Madam, today they are joined from my mobile.
Prakash is
Sir,
Yeah, bola Prakash.
Hello.
Go for it.
hello.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible, sir?
yeah, very
Very
good.
much. Yeah, very much, Prakash. Please go ahead.
Can
Yeah.
we request Dr.
Yeah.
Sorgade to
Ma,
stop
audible,
sharing
sir.
so that all will be visible?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Prakash, you are audible. You are audible.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah.
So how do you
Good evening,
stop
sir. I'm
sharing?
really very happy. Yeah. Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. I'm really very happy to be here today with Dr. Ashok, yes, sir, as well as yeah. See, now I think first of all we should congratulate Mukund. Yeah. I must. Yes. Okay.
So I think there's connectivity issue.
I
can
must
hear you
congratulate Dr. Mukund Chorgade.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Mukund, you stop
Chorgade
sharing.
for
Mukund, you stop sharing, please.
having really made the difference for all of us. I think I do agree with him that the India is such a vast herbal or a plant source which you are not exploited. I think only 5 to 10% has been exploited, and still in the 5% only you are just remaining. But at the same time, a person like Dr. Mukund Chorgade should definitely interact with all our research organizations and do it. Earlier, he has been doing when I was at IICT, but today we are finding it so difficult. See, the clinical trials which you are taking here are of a mediocre way of doing it. There is a lot of controversy go on, and because of these reasons, the activity in India is
I think your connectivity is poor. So Prakash, you very well expressed that Professor Mukund Chorkade should be more available, but I think he's more than available. It is the Indian institutes which have not taken the initiative. And I blame even the top councils of the nation, even some of the universities, that such a distinguished colleague of ours in US is ready to help our efforts, but these are not being followed up. So I would request now Dr. Sudarshan Iyengar, who has been a leader of Gujarat Vidyapeeth and education in India, and I would, Sashena, please switch off. Sashena, please switch off. Sashena, please switch off. Sudarshan, I hope it was very technical and not for you, but please.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. My video is not working as usual. Some technical hitches in the last moment always happen. But let me first humbly submit that I was one more person at least who understood other than Dr. Chorgade and God. So he can be rest assured that he has increased his viewership and understanding of what was being said. I think that the game that had gone out of our hand and the way we practiced our traditional medicine, the way our Ayurvedic experts tried to interact and work with the population made it a mystic science to a large extent, where one generation did not pass on what was known to them to the next generation. It was all in some, obviously, because the modern science was not there. So what we really we understood was the administration of the drug, behavior, the way with which you have to take that medicine, which is known as anupana, and then of course the strict lifestyle which went with it. So there was always a parhez. The parhez comes perhaps from Unani, and in Gujarati it has become pareji, but whatever it is, that there are do's and don'ts when you are on certain kind of medication. This was all observation and outcome kind of science that got rejected in the face of what was there, where we thought about a positivist approach of proof positive. I think that this new synthesis, or whatever I understand as reverse pharmacology, I will not obviously understand the whole science of it because I do not have that background. But what I have understood is trying to understand the science which is there in the medicines that we have tried, range of medicines that we have tried. So we need more of Ashok Bhai's, Ramaben's, and the whole team that you are, and also Dr. Chorgade. And you know what a nice mix. Understanding from Lavani. I mean, this is fantastic. That Lavani has had a message for us. Is it not fascinating for all of us? Yes, it is. And I think it was there. So thank you very much. We need to more of this. I have only few anxieties that we have been thrown out because of our way of doing things. That this is not proven by double-blind clinical trials. Now, why is this? I mean, I know this is a kind of a scientific, rational, scientific, Popperian approach to identification and solution of a problem in medicine. But is that the only way of doing, or there are alternative ways of doing? So, what is the central message that we would like to convey to our ordinary Ayurvedic practitioners? Let me tell you, Chorgade, I am sure you are aware of the Indian situation. Most of them get this degree and start practicing allopathy because this is a license to practice. Now, this is very unfortunate. So, how do you change this situation? This is just a question asking to a chemist will say, यार इसमें मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? तुम्हारे administration को पकड़ो क्या करना है? So we need to work. I'm just posing this with this anxiety. And my earlier question was that how do you really, the reverse pharmacology is one way perhaps of convincing this classical double-blind clinical trial people. Now, how exactly essential is that?
I would venture the opinion that it will be indeed very essential to do that. So you are not going to necessarily get around it, all this double blind and all, but you have a very tremendous starting point. You have got a whole range of what we would call medications which have already been in man for centuries, which have not manifested the kind of adverse effects that many of the allopathic science do. So the first starting point is to assemble all that data and parse it. Secondly, as I have always advocated, once you know the purity, the chemical structure, the mechanism of action of any molecule, you can continue to administer it at the same level as it is found in the plants. Take pomegranate juice, which they made a big play on for regressing prostate cancer and benefiting breast cancer. So you isolate the alkaloids and you have some there, you have berberine, you have emmetine and all that. My mother used to always believe that that was helpful to ward off dysentery and diarrhea and all that. But today you isolate those molecules, you do simple cell studies to show that whether they can counteract those cancer cells, because those haven't been done. But you don't need a whole big elaborate clinical trial, because you can keep administering the patient and you can keep recommending that they drink the 2 glasses of pomegranate juice. If it has a curative effect, now this is backed up by very precise modern science. You can also take those emmetine and all that, you can make hybrid molecules by Marty Berg's synthesis machine. In my dream world, if we have a setup even in Mumbai where we license this machine, we can put it to good use, things can happen. And we were having some discussions with Professor Mane that this can be a new form of entrepreneurship in India. Whereas people make these materials, they rely on the wisdom. Now, all the materials for a start will be those molecules derived from traditional plants and other things. I would even go further in saying those that have been worked on in KHRC. But now let us bring the chemical structures to the fore. And that will be a wonderful form of entrepreneurship where I envision that even the Ayurvedic doctors, they used to have a degree called BAMS, but they at least know the fundamentals of the chemical structure of the molecule they are administering. Many people completely stay away from that one, and then it does not become the real science. Today, from talking to many Ayurvedic, I'm talking about the Ayurvedic physicians in America, they do have an organization. And according, they would not let me into this organization. I volunteered to give a talk, but they said, no, that is just science. We want to stay with. yes, you can stay with that one, but there are uses to this one that you haven't yet comprehended, and this is the time to do it.
I think Varsha madam on the screen. Very nice to see you, madam. And I think you were mentioned many times by Mukul. And I think a heavy responsibility is falling on your shoulders. So I would request your views after listening to this hybrid lecture, I would say, not hybrid molecule. It's a hybrid lecture of Ayurveda, reverse pharmacology and drug discovery. Varsha madam.
Thank you and namaskar to all. It's always a pleasure to hear Professor Chorgade. And, I call him a man with a Midas touch, So any molecule or any article that he touches, it just transforms into something magical. About the talk today, sir, indeed, I mean, there are a lot of opportunities with Mumbai University as well as KHRC coming together, catalyzed by Professor Chorgade, obviously. And we are majorly into molecular biology, and we have been doing a lot of, enhancing the diagnostics and boosting the diagnostics using traditional methods. The lab has gone against the flow, and we have got some very interesting results, and I have shared that with Professor Chorgade, and he has kind of given it a different twist altogether, revealing many more applications of what we have been doing. Especially the chemical catalyst, which Professor Chorgade also spoke about, is indeed very fascinating, and I think it could be put to use. And Marty Burke's machine is just proudly magical, and Mumbai University could probably, play a crucial role in. I may be very ambitious in saying that hosting it at the university. And Dr. Vaidya, I completely agree with you that Professor Chorgade's intellect we have not been able to use as we should have, even when he was invited for a Gyan program, and it was, I think, one of the fantastic programs and sessions which we had at University of Mumbai. And unfortunately, our team did not, take the maximum benefit as they should have taken. But yes, University of Mumbai, my lab is always, we are looking forward to joining hands and doing many more things under your able guidance. And, as Dr. Chorgade rightly said, we already have it in our hand. We just need to open it and see what we have and tell the world that this is what we have and this is what we have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to briefly answer what Sudarshanji mentioned. The Secretary of Ayush responded to me recently, and he said that there is going to be big data generated on all Ayurvedic drug usage in the nation, in all the Ayurvedic hospitals and leading institutes. And so Rama Madam's idea of Ayurvedic pharmacoepidemiology, and Nutan Madam is sitting here, one of the first PhD in Ayurvedic pharmacoepidemiology. So Sudarshanji, there will be a massive big data analysis, and this method of Ayurvedic pharmacoepidemiology actually precedes observation therapeutics and reverse pharmacology. Then you don't need even huge, big controlled double-blind trials, because I am pioneer of double-blind controlled trials in this nation. I taught all the pharmacologists how to do double-blind controlled trials, and they are needed when there are marginal advantages. When in a small number, you see distinct advantages of a drug used already, that's not needed. Your second point about practicing doctors not using Ayurveda, I think there is a movement at the Niti Aayog to have one uniform curriculum for undergraduate doctors. So we want to create practitioners which use the best of all the systems. And I think Varsha Madam's point, we have to take Shobha Madam and we have to invite her to give us a lecture on some of the work she is doing. And I think this is the best opportunity today to take a decision, and I request Mukund to guide the whole effort along with Ashwin and Varsha Madam and Shobha Madam is on Tiruspara Cordical.
And Uday can play a wonderful role.
Prajakta has done outstanding work on the Tirospora hyperactive in cancer cell lines and with combinations and all. So we have to think of whether we can create some hybrid molecule of the small numbers in a polysaccharide getting reduced to 3 or 4 molecules only coupled with berberine, because these are the two very active molecules in the Tirospora. And I think we can take some steps in this direction already. I would request Dr. Raut, if he is there, he was not well because he had fever, if he is there, to share his views. Is Dr. Raut there?
One can call.
Yes, sir. It was a wonderful talk, Dr. Chorgade. I again enjoyed your, listening to you and sharing your journey with all of us of chemistry and how it is becoming more and more relevant to go through our traditional systems of medicine through the reverse pharmacology approach. And it was a wonderful insight from the chemist point of view and how it will be useful for drug discovery. And what sir has said now about Tirospora cordifolia, as we know that Tirospora has been used in Ayurveda extensively, and particularly during this phase of COVID, it is found to be a most useful and the most front-running plant in managing the COVID-related symptoms and entire disease of COVID. So I think if we really come together and do something about this, as sir had said, hybrid molecule, and if we can bring some better insights and better leads from that, it will be a wonderful thing to work with you, and we look forward to you for such guidance from you. Thank you.
No, I have suggested.
Ashok bhai, my only concern was that once in a way you have these Baba Ramdevs and IMA coming, against one another in such a strong way and create biases on either side. Now we need to resolve this, and I don't know how acceptable this idea of
I think Rama is the right person to talk about it, because she talked to the IMF president only.
Very
I have said we have to listen to the parties who are opposing something. Once you listen to, one understands. I did in a summary tell that the Beckery is not monopoly of any system of medicine. Beckery occurs everywhere. However, the entire issue got inflamed objection that the surgery, even if the minor surgery is to be done, what kind of a theatre, what kind of infrastructure, what kind of a nurse should be also trained nurse in a surgical theatre. There are many issues which are not SOPs so far as surgery is concerned. So in today, the way the Ayurvedic field, a strong objection to that. And I do feel that today it was good that I talked to him, because he's going to operate on my uncle. And so I happened to talk to him. I said, for other reason also, I would have come to you, that why IMA is so much objecting. I think that their objection is not totally wrong. If they are not totally wrong, what can happen is to start all way. KHS MRC has started the system dialogue in a couple of areas. We may expand it, because when the is not totally wrong in certainly for some objections that they are taking. So we need to understand that part. However, they are also objecting that the Dover Hospital, GMC, somewhere the noise is coming back. Am I heard properly?
No, please. Sudarshan.
Ah.
Others have to mute themselves.
Please mute, others should mute. Yeah. So he said that GMC starting a bridge course in pharmacology. Can pharmacology be learned only in 6 months? So I think that let us figure it out what are their objections first. So if a dialogue is started, then one by one that could be, because they feel that the centrally councils are trying to say that one nation, one healthcare. How can that happen? They're not totally wrong. They're not totally wrong. But somebody who's not totally wrong, what is right that they are saying must be heard first. So, yes, I mean, he was so upset when he was talking. And I think that in India, the clinical services are offered as the private clinics, where there is a commercial angle and there are competitions. So it's not so simple. It's not offered from either the municipality-run hospitals or from the government-run hospitals for healthcare. And we are not even talking about primary, secondary, tertiary, and advanced centers where there could be linkages. And for the linkage, we have not been able to use our entire medical number that we have. And there are many issues. So, as you said rightly, that we need to first have inter-system dialogue. It will not otherwise get resolved.
Thank you. Shobha Madam, have we exceeded time? Then please conclude. And vote of thanks to Mukund sir.
Sir, I think we could go up to another 5 minutes extra if somebody wants to ask very, very pertinent questions. Otherwise, I will give the vote.
Okay.
Anybody, sir, do you have anything? Chorgade, sir, you need to unmute.
Resolved to have a very concrete collaboration between you all, me, Professor Mane, and Uday Ohre. You know, each one of us can bring different things to the table. I think it's important to put Dinospora into a health context, into this mineral water context, and so many other nice things. And when we talk about many of the doctors in India, many of them are not looking on things in a very scientific way. I always remember a favorite joke that was told to me. That was that there was a patient who was always pestering a doctor to prescribe him something, to find something wrong with him so he can brag about it. So finally the doctor could not find anything wrong. So his only suggestion was, my friend, can you sleep without your clothes on a block of ice for 8 hours? Then you go up and sleep in the cold of winter outside. Then you have a dip in the river at 4 a.m. in the bitter cold of winter, and come back and have 2 gallons of ice cream. And the man said, oh my God, that will cure me. The doctor said, no, that way you are guaranteed to get pneumonia, and I know what tablets I will prescribe you for those.
That's fantastic. So if nobody has anything more to say, Chorgade sir, I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. Number one, because I've always shied away from chemistry, and you have rekindled my, or at least reminded me, and which I keep telling used to tell my students, everything is based on chemistry and physics. So it's kind of rekindled that bulb in my brain that one must look at the fundamental sciences, and nature has it all laid out for us. I remember a wonderful scientist from ARC who did a lot of work on gas liquid chromatography and flavor compounds in mango. And he told me, we are not inventing anything new. We are only discovering what the divine forces have laid out for us. But we have to look at it with the right lens. So, sir, thank you so much. And I must thank you very, very much for consenting to be with us, for being a catalytic force to bring us all together. I know the kind of work I have seen from very close and from afar, the kind of dedicated efforts put in by Sir and Rama ma'am. Even today, I don't have that energy and stamina that they have, but they are excellent role models for all of us. And once again, thank you very, very much and hope to work more closely for the general benefit of mankind and nature in general. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everybody, for the good work. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night. Good morning, sir, and good night, everyone else in India.
Thank you very much.
Iyengar, sir, we have recorded, I think. I'll see how to reach it to you. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Shobhaji. Thank you
Thank
so
you, sir.
much. It is so helpful.
Thank you so much.
Very
Send it to all of us, and then next time I speak, maybe I'll come in a dhotar, a kamandalu, and all that.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Yeah.
Okay, that will be.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
अभी ये आया है क्या देखो, मैंने प्लीज चेक दिस।